Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between to the Movie Script channel. I'm your host, Charlie, and today we're going to talk about my favorite James Wan directed film, Malignant. Now, I know, that's a pretty bold statement, especially since James Wan has quite the resume of directed films, but I'm not talking about the most scariest film, I'm talking about the most entertaining, and for me, I gotta give it to Malignant. I absolutely loved this film when I first saw it. I didn't see any trailers for it. I didn't know what I was getting into. And then I saw the movie and wow, amazing. And it's not just that I find this film entertaining, but I can't believe that James Wan managed to get this film through New Line Cinema. Because really, it's not your typical jump scare horror movie, although it does have that. Now, personally, when I saw this film, I got like a bit of a 1960s, 1970s drive-in, grindhouse type of vibe, but the movie starts off that way, it has that type of vibe, and then the middle of the movie, it gets to more of your typical horror, mystery, thriller type of film, and then finally in the third act, it goes absolutely batshit crazy. Like the film just goes off the rocker, and it is, mwah, it is perfect. Now, according to James Wan himself from an interview in Bloody Disgusting magazine, he actually said that he's always wanted to make a giallo Italian inspired type movie, and this film is kind of in the mold of that, although he does say that it's not specifically giallo, it's more along the lines of Dario Argento's later works, and I'll post it up, and I'll also post a link to the interview in the description. But that's why this film is so unique. It's not your typical jump scare horror film. He decided to make his own version of a giallo film, but with his own unique twist, and it works. So let's go ahead and recap the film, and then I'll go over some specific highlights of the film that I truly enjoyed. Now, I do want to say that I highly recommend this movie, so if you want to watch Malignant, as of July of 2023, it's still on HBO Max or Max, or you can just rent it or buy it, but if you got HBO Max, go for it there. So the movie starts off on a flashback of some creepy mental hospital where a doctor is discussing a patient on camera when all hell breaks loose in the hospital. The monster isn't directly shown, but it does appear to be a monster with the powers of telekinesis and communicating through speaker. The monster is finally tranquilized, and then we cut to present day. Now, Maddie's our main character. She's getting home from work. They never say what she does in the film, but it looks like something medical. She's also very much pregnant and looks like she's very tired. She comes home to Steven Crowder, an abusive husband who cracks her head into the wall because she's not feeling well, and he's blaming her for all her miscarriages, which is just disgusting. The back of her head is bleeding, but instead of calling the cops on this asshole, she just locks herself in the room. I want to note that we're not talking about a little bit of blood behind her head here. This is emergency room level stuff. Later on that night, that piece of shit is murdered and Maddie is attacked by some shadow that kind of looks like the girl from the Ring movie, and she's knocked unconscious. Man and woman detectives suspect Maddie, but there's no concrete evidence. Let me also note that Maddie's sister, who is kind of like her sidekick in this film, appears to have a romantic interest in male detective, and it also looks like he's interested in her, but nothing comes of that. So we could just ignore that whole thing. So Maddie ends up losing her baby as well, although the real reason becomes clear later on in the film. And the cherry on top of this nightmare is that Maddie has to tell her sister that Maddie was adopted. We now cut to some woman working at an underground city that is actually real and located in Seattle. She finishes her shift and is then chased and kidnapped. More on that later. The monster calls the doctor we see in the prologue and kills her, and then takes one of her awards and fashions a weapon out of it. Meanwhile, Maddie is seeing these deaths and then realizes that the deaths that she's having these visions are actually real. Another doctor from the prologue dies and Maddie goes to the cops convinced they are real, which which is crazy to me because if you go to the cops and tell them you have visions of someone being murdered and they find a murdered person, you end up becoming suspect number one. Maddie is also now getting calls from the killer who tells her that his name is Gabe and he claims that they know each other. Later, Maddie and her sister go to their mom and mention Gabe, and mom shows them some videos of Maddie talking about Gabe and some type of medical interviews. Apparently, Gabe and Maddie were at the same mental facility and are siblings. Detective Man finally connects the dots and locates the final doctor that the killer is targeting, but is too late to stop the murder. He chases the killer to the underground city and loses him. Take note that the killer appears to have superhuman strength. The detectives, seeing as they're getting nowhere, they decide to use a hypnotherapist to see if Maddie can remember more about Gabe, and as they are uncovering some info, the woman that was kidnapped earlier in the underground city frees herself and then falls through the roof of Maddie's house while the two detectives are there, and it is absolutely hilarious. So the cops of course arrest Maddie. Back at the police station, Gabe ends up calling the police and taunting them. The detectives find out that the kidnapped woman in Maddie's home is actually Gabe and Maddie's biological mother, and then Maddie's sister finds the bombshell video that Gabe is actually a conjoined twin living behind Maddie. The doctors that were killed by Gabe basically all had a hand in removing body parts of Gabe and stuffing them back into Maddie's skull, basically making him dormant and getting rid of all the power that he had, and that's why he was targeting them. So basically what happens is when the asshole husband throws Maddie up against a wall and cracks her skull, it wakes up Gabe and then he becomes active. Then later on, he's the one who ends up killing the husband and also killing the baby, although we'll get to that in a few minutes. So now we're coming up to my favorite scene, and that is the jail cell scene. And this scene is fantastic. So Maddie is in this large holding cell with a bunch of other women. One of them happens to be a time traveler from the 1970s, and they decide to jump her. That wakes up Gabe, and we finally get to see him in his full glory. Well, you guys won't get to see him on YouTube in all his full glory because YouTube sucks, and if I put this video up uncensored, it'll definitely get age restricted, so sorry guys. So Gabe trashes everyone in the room in the most brutal ways. I love how scared shitless all these women become once Gabe makes his appearance, but hey, that's what you bitches get for fucking with her. Gabe escapes the cell and all of a sudden becomes John Wick and just mows down all the cops in her way. She almost kills the two detectives, but they escape. Well, sort of. They head towards the door and then Gabe ends up throwing a chair and knocking them both out, which is just so jarring and absolutely hilarious. I busted out laughing when I saw this scene. So the final battle takes place in the hospital room where Maddie's birth mother is recovering. Gabe goes there to kill his mom for giving them up and also to kill Maddie's sister for taking him away from Maddie. A struggle ensues and Maddie's sister yells out that Gabe has been killing her babies, and that causes Maddie to snap out of it. First of all, I just gotta say that when she yelled out that line, I was cracking up because I was just like, how does she know that? It's not like the videos explained any of that. It's like she just put that together and either just said it in an act of desperation, or there's a missing scene that explained that and we never got to saw it. Also, I gotta say that it reminded me of the South Park episode with Christopher Reeves when he's breaking open the fetuses and sucking on them. I just picture Gabe absorbing the fetus in order to get stronger, and it just cracks me up. So Maddie ends up turning the tables and she traps Gabe within her mind and leaves him powerless, although he does warn that it won't be forever, and there we have our happy ending. I mean, except for all the cops and perps that got killed at the jail cell, I'm assuming that Maddie's not gonna take the blame? How do you explain that in a courtroom when they try to charge you for murder and you say, well, it was my conjoined twin? I mean, I don't even know where to begin with that. Anyway, so there you have it. Malignant. Amazing film. So a couple of highlights that I actually wanted to point out about this film. And number one, the cinematography, the locations, the atmosphere, all of it top notch, especially that underground city in Seattle. First of all, I never knew that such a thing existed. It looks amazing. I'd love to visit it, but I think they should have utilized it a bit more. I think it would have made it a much more interesting movie if the final battle actually took place in that underground city. Otherwise, fantastic locations. I'll even forgive the fact that the outside of Maddie's house looks so small compared to the inside, which looks like a mansion. But you know, that's not something that completely took me out of the film, so I'll forgive it. I also want to commend the practical effects. There wasn't a lot of CGI used, or if there was CGI used, it was very well done because I couldn't notice it. So I had no complaints whatsoever for any of the practical effects, especially when they show Gabe. It just felt organic. It looked natural. Well, as natural as Gabe can look, but I really enjoyed the practical effects of this film. I'm glad that they did not use CGI for Gabe. It just looks perfect. It looks exactly what I want in a horror film. So my only negatives about the film are kind of small. Like, for one thing, the CSI tech is just unbearable. Her acting is horrible. But I did find out that she's actually James Wan's girlfriend, which makes a ton of sense of why she's in the film in the first place. The only other negative thing that I would probably mention is that they use the Pixie song. I don't know if you remember Fight Club at the end of the film when they use that Pixie song when the buildings are exploding and falling down. Well, they use that in the film in a couple of scenes when there's some type of like big reveal, and it feels weird. It almost feels like schlock, like complete schlock for them to put that in there. It's a little bit jarring. It's not like it takes me completely out of the film. It's just so odd. Otherwise, the soundtrack is great, but when they add the Pixies music to like a couple of scenes, it's so weird. I wonder if someone else put that into the film, like one of the editors or what, because it feels so out of place with the rest of the film. Other than those two things, that's it. That's the only negatives I have about this film. I genuinely enjoyed it. I truly think that New Line and Warner Brothers dropped the ball on the marketing for this film because I didn't hear anything about it until I personally clicked on it because I was just browsing through movies on HBO Max and I was like, oh, what's this? And then I just fell in love with it. But I was like, where was the marketing for this film? Where was it? I know it came out during the pandemic, but damn. Other than that, this is a great film and a great alternative to the films like Sinister and Conjuring. It is a horror film, but it is unique. It is not in the same mold as all those other films, especially with the jump scares. This film doesn't really rely on the jump scares as much as those other films do. And that's something that I truly appreciated. And again, no nasty CGI, great practical effects. The acting is okay. I have no complaints about the acting. It's neither good nor bad. It's just on par. Great film. I highly encourage you to watch it. Again, it's on Max as of July of 2023. Well, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for listening. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification because I've got a lot more content like this on the way, and I'm going to start doing a couple of watch parties. I unfortunately have to do them on Twitch because YouTube sucks, but I'm going to do some watch parties on Twitch. We're going to watch Maniac Cop 2. We're going to watch Class of Nukem High. It's going to be amazing, so hit that like, hit that notify, hit that subscribe, and that way you can get in on the fun. I'll see you on the next video. Thank you all so much, and have a lovely evening. Take care.